Imagine evil hiding in plain sight and everyone just missing it. Silas Thorne lived among us, smiling, blending in, until the day the doors blew open and the horror inside could no longer be ignored. This isn't just a story about a monster. It's a story about every system that let him stay free. Are you ready to step into Port Azure's darkest nightmare? Port Azure always had a certain fog-laden charm, didn't it? An unsettling quiet often draped the harbor city before dawn. But this was different. This silence felt wrong, like the held breath before a scream. Because beneath the veneer of everyday life, a hidden evil was meticulously at work, a shadow weaving nightmares. Then came the chilling discovery at that nondescript apartment building. The doors burst open, not just on a room, but on an abyss. Police carried out boxes, evidence hinting at a grotesque death factory behind ordinary walls. The city choked on disbelief, then horror. How could such darkness thrive unseen? The shadow finally gained a name, Silas Thorne. Now, Port Azure braced for the courtroom reckoning, the only stage left for confronting the monster. What happens when pure darkness is forced to face the light? In the case of Silas Thorne, the darkness simply blinked. There he stood in the dock, an island of unsettling calm amidst raw grief and simmering rage. While families trembled with suppressed sobs, Thorne seemed utterly detached, his gaze distant, almost disinterested. Like waiting for a bus, not judgment. Then the hammer fell, life sentence upon life sentence, an eternity locked away. The reaction? Not despair. Not anger. A faint sigh escaped him, shoulders slumping slightly. Relief. Unmistakable, chilling relief. A collective gasp was audible. He finally addressed the court, voice eerily flat. "Your Honor, it is over now." He paused. This was never about trying to get free. I didn't ever want freedom. Frankly, I wanted death for myself. He wanted the death the state wouldn't provide. Later, he offered his own chilling dichotomy. I knew I was sick or evil or both. Sick? Evil? Confession, justification, or just another turn in his mental labyrinth? The question hung heavy, demanding answers perhaps beyond the court's reach. Sick? Evil? That question hung in the sterile courtroom air, a riddle wrapped in horror. The psychiatric evaluation tried to pin it down, of course. Experts tossed around clinical-sounding labels, malignant compulsion disorder, a severe empathy deficit, terms attempting to map the unmappable territory of his mind. But it was the testimony of Dr. Alastair Finch that cut through the jargon with chilling precision. Finch pointed relentlessly to the alcohol. Gallons of it, consumed before the acts. Why? Because Silas Thorne, Finch argued forcefully, needed liquid courage to dissolve his inhibitions, to silence the tiny, flickering ember of knowing right from wrong before unleashing his horrors. He couldn't apparently face his own deeds sober. And that, the court ultimately decided, meant he understood his actions were wrong. Legal sanity. Game over on that front, despite the complex diagnoses. And yet, Thorne offered words that sounded like an apology. Flat, almost recited statements mentioning the immense harm caused, a nod to Judge Holloway whose earlier attempt at help was refused, even regret towards the Port Azure PD he tricked. He even suggested, incredibly, that any money from selling his grisly possessions, his literal murderabilia, should go to the victims' families. Compensation via his tools of death? But was it true remorse? Or just empty performance, the last resort of a man finally caged? These calculated apologies felt disturbingly hollow. Especially considering the shadows stretching from his past. Those shadows stretching from Silas Thorne's past weren't just vague specters, they had names and untold stories of chances squandered. Because this trial? It wasn't his first dance with justice, not even close. Remember the apology to Judge Holloway? That stemmed from a prior conviction years earlier, the assault of young Kai Chen. A conviction, yes, but one met with astonishing leniency. A carefully crafted letter expressing remorse, perhaps Holloway's own hope for redemption, resulted in Thorne serving mere months before walking free on probation. A crucial missed warning, a system trusting the mask instead of seeing the monster beneath. And the tragic irony deepens, twisting like a knife. While on probation, Thorne continued his prowling. Then came the night involving Leo Chen, Kai's own younger brother, a gut-wrenching twist of fate. Port Azure PD found Leo disoriented, drugged, stumbling through the dark streets. Naked and bruised. The officers, perhaps tired, perhaps tragically dismissive, encountered Thorne. He likely played the concerned partner. They assumed a drunken argument, a domestic issue easily resolved. "Take your friend home," they might have said. In a moment of utterly catastrophic police failure, blinded by assumption, they handed Leo back. Escorted him to the door of Thorne's apartment. A lamb delivered to the slaughter. It was a fatal, tragic error. Leo was killed that night. A direct consequence of a profound system failure, of missed warnings piling up until they crushed the life out of an innocent boy. These weren't just procedural errors, they were death sentences delivered by negligence, paving the way for more sorrow. And the sorrow caused by those failures, the lives snuffed out by negligence. It finally found its raw, unfiltered voice in the courtroom during the victim impact statements. One by one, shattered families stepped forward for their confrontation, facing the void who had ripped their lives apart. The air crackled, thick with palpable grief and an almost unbearable rage. Maria Bellwether, sister of Marcus, approached the stand, trembling but resolute. "Look at me," she demanded, her voice a blade cutting through the silence. "He wasn't just another name. He was my brother. The baby of our family. Did you ever stop to think?" Her composure finally broke, pure, undiluted agony erupting. "I hope you rot for eternity," she screamed, the sound echoing the room's collective pain. Others followed, voices thick with tears, pleading, sharing memories, demanding answers from the impassive mask across the room. Through this torrent of human suffering, Silas Thorne sat. Unmoved. A black hole absorbing their anguish without reflection. Even the seasoned Judge Evans looked weary, the horror etched onto his face. "Nobody asks a judge about horror movies," he murmured, his voice heavy, "because I turn them off. You can't turn this off." He spoke profoundly of the heartbreaking limits of justice. "I don't have the power to bring people back." Then, the final sentencing. Life imprisonment, plus 10 years. Consecutive. Another life sentence, consecutive. Count after count hammered down, piling up centuries of confinement, a symbolic eternity, stretching towards the year 3000. The gavel fell like a final stone upon Thorne's freedom. That symbolic eternity sentence, nearly 1,000 years? Silas Thorne served less than 2 inside North Lake State Penitentiary's gray walls. He remained an enigma, mostly quiet, perhaps contemplating, or perhaps not. Then, one bleak morning, the news filtered out. Thorne was murdered. Details were murky: an altercation near the showers, a heavy weight, a brutal end delivered by fellow inmates. Some called it prison justice, a grim taste of his own medicine. But was it justice? Or simply the cycle of violence continuing its grim rotation? For the families left behind in the aftermath, the news brought fractured emotions, no simple peace. Some felt a harsh wave of relief. "Thank God, the monster is dead," one father reportedly said. Finally. But others felt a bitter hollowness, a sense of being cheated of his long suffering. "It's worse now," wept one mother. "He isn't suffering like we still are." His brutal end offered no easy closure, no solace really. No happy endings possible here. Just a fittingly violent departure for a man defined by brutality, leaving the deepest questions still hanging heavy in the air. So, the brutal end arrived for Silas Thorne. But the silence that followed his death wasn't peace, it was just absence. Looking back now, the journey through his specific brand of darkness feels almost surreal. Port Azure's horrifying awakening from that unsettling quiet, the unnerving theater of the trial, the endless, Circling questions of sick versus evil, remorse versus masterful manipulation. We glimpsed the system failures, the missed warnings that cost lives, and felt the raw, searing trauma of families utterly destroyed. Thorne's own violent demise closed a chapter, perhaps, but certainly not the book. Because there are no easy answers here, no neat conclusions or tidy moral lessons to be drawn from the abyss. Just the stark reality of the lasting impact, the permanent scar is left on so many lives and on the psyche of Port Azure itself. The unanswered questions about the nature of evil embodied by Silas Thorne, about how such profound darkness can hide in plain sight, still echo. They leave behind a lingering chill, a disquieting reminder of the fragility beneath the surface of things.